The day of my grandmother's funeral, my family couldn't stop smiling. Oh, they pretended to cry. They wiped invisible tears with embroidered handkerchiefs. They hugged each other and whispered about how much they'd miss her. But I saw the truth behind their performance. I saw the greed flickering in their eyes. I saw them calculating, scheming, already spending money that wasn't even cold yet. And when the will was read, they finally dropped the act. $5,000? My cousin David laughed out loud. That's all Grandma left to the favorite granddaughter? 5,000. My aunt patted my hand with fake sympathy. Well, dear, you were always her favorite. I'm sure she meant well. But the rest of us, well, we have responsibilities. They didn't know about the letter. They didn't know about the condition. And they definitely didn't know that in exactly 30 days, everything would change. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, if you've ever watched greedy relatives circle like vultures while pretending to grieve, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for one of the most satisfying inheritance revenge stories you'll ever hear. Because my grandmother wasn't just rich. She was smart. And she'd planned everything perfectly. To understand what happened, you need to understand my grandmother. Eleanor Whitmore was not your typical wealthy widow. She built her fortune from nothing, started as a secretary in the 1960s, invested wisely, bought real estate when everyone said she was crazy. By the time I was born, she owned half the commercial property in our city. But money didn't change her. She still wore the same cardigan for 20 years. Still grew tomatoes in her backyard. Still clipped coupons, not because she needed to, but because wasting money offended her. I was her favorite. Everyone knew it. Not because I flattered her or pretended to be something I wasn't, but because I actually loved her. While my cousins were asking for money, I asked for stories. While they complained about her old-fashioned house, I helped her garden. While they talked about what they'd do with their inheritance someday, I just sat with her and watched old movies. Ava, she told me once, about a year before she died, you're the only one in this family who actually sees me. The rest of them see dollar signs. I laughed. That's not true, Grandma. She just smiled. That knowing smile she had. You'll see, sweetheart. You'll see. Music shifts, slightly darker. My family was complicated. My Aunt Patricia, Grandma's eldest daughter, acted like she ran everything. She'd been waiting for her inheritance for 30 years, convinced she deserved it because she was the responsible one. In reality, she'd married a wealthy man and spent her life spending his money. My Uncle Robert was a businessman who'd never actually run a successful business. Every few years, he'd show up asking Grandma to invest in some scheme. She always said no. He always got angry. And my cousins? David was a trust fund kid who'd never worked a day. Jessica married a lawyer and acted like she was royalty. Mark was the youngest, always trying to impress the others by joining in their mockery of me. I was the odd one out. The one who worked at a nonprofit. The one who drove a 10-year-old car. The one who actually called Grandma every Sunday, not to check in on her money, but to check in on her. When she got sick, I was the one who visited the hospital every day. Who held her hand during chemo. Who brought her homemade soup she couldn't eat but appreciated anyway. When she died, I was the one holding her hand. And when the family gathered for the funeral, I was the one they barely looked at. The funeral was a performance. Patricia wore black designer sunglasses and sobbed loudly every time someone approached her. Robert delivered a eulogy filled with flowery language about a woman ahead of her time, a speech he'd clearly Googled the night before. The cousins stood in a perfect row, looking appropriately somber, stealing glances at their watches. I stood in the back, alone, wearing a simple black dress I'd owned for years. After the service, at the reception, the masks started slipping. Can you believe how many people came? Jessica whispered loudly to her mother. Imagine how much the flowers cost. Such a waste. She always did too much, Patricia agreed. All those roses. For what? She can't even see them. I walked away. I couldn't listen to them pick apart my grandmother's funeral like they were critiquing a wedding. David cornered me by the punch bowl. So, Ava, any idea what the old lady left you? besides her collection of ugly sweaters. I smiled tightly. I don't think about it. Sure you don't. He laughed. Everyone thinks about it. I'm thinking about it right now. I'm thinking about a new boat. Grandma would be so proud, I said flatly. He missed the sarcasm completely. Music becomes ominous. The reading of the will was scheduled for 3 days after the funeral. I arrived at the lawyer's office wearing the same simple dress. My family arrived looking like they were attending a red carpet event. Patricia in Chanel. Robert in a suit that cost more than my monthly rent. The cousins all perfectly pressed and polished. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, had been Grandma's attorney for 40 years. He was old, precise, and clearly not a fan of my family. Please sit, he said, gesturing to the conference room. This will take approximately 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Robert looked alarmed. That long? Your mother had extensive instructions. We sat around a massive mahogany table. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses and began reading. To my daughter Patricia, I leave my jewelry collection, including the diamond earrings your father gave me on our 20th anniversary. I hope you wear them with the same joy I did. Patricia nodded, satisfied. The jewelry was worth maybe $200,000. To my son Robert, I leave my collection of vintage wine and my shares in Whitmore Properties, which generate approximately $80,000 annually. Robert's face lit up. $80,000 a year. Not bad. To my grandson David, I leave $50,000 to be used for educational purposes or business investment. David's smile faltered. Educational? I'm 42. Mr. Harrison ignored him and continued. To my granddaughter Jessica, I leave $50,000 and my summer cottage in Muskoka. Jessica looked pleased. The cottage was worth at least $500,000. To my grandson Mark, I leave $50,000 and my 1965 Mustang, which he always admired as a child. Mark grinned. The Mustang was a classic, worth a small fortune. Music shifts. Focus on me. Then Mr. Harrison looked at me. Everyone leaned forward. To my granddaughter Ava, whom I loved more than words can express, I leave $5,000. Silence. Then David snorted. 5,000? That's it. Jessica covered her mouth, but I saw her smiling behind her hand. Patricia looked almost gleeful. Well, I suppose she had her reasons. Robert shrugged. The favorite granddaughter. $5,000. That's rich. I stared at the paper. 5,000? That didn't make sense. Grandma and I were close. She told me I was the only one who saw her. Why would she? Music becomes mysterious. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. There's more. Everyone froze. As many of you know, your mother and grandmother was a woman who appreciated theater. She has asked that I now read a letter she wrote 6 months before her passing, addressed to the entire family. He pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with wax. My grandmother's handwriting. Before I read this, Mr. Harrison said, I must inform you that this letter contains specific instructions. Legal instructions. You are all bound by them. Patricia shifted uncomfortably. Bound? What does that mean? Mr. Harrison broke the seal and began to read. My dearest family, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I imagine you've just heard the results of my will. I can picture your faces, Patricia's carefully hidden disappointment that I didn't leave her more, Robert's calculation of how much he can sell those shares for, and my grandchildren. Oh, my grandchildren. I can see David scoffing, Jessica smirking, Mark confused. And Ava. My sweet Ava. I can see you sitting there, confused, hurt, wondering why your grandmother, the one who loved you most, left you practically nothing. Let me explain. I've watched this family for 82 years. I've watched you, Patricia, treat service workers like servants. I've watched you, Robert, chase easy money while avoiding honest work. I've watched David spend his 20s and 30s doing nothing. I've watched Jessica marry for status, not love. I've watched Mark follow the crowd because he's too afraid to think for himself. And I've watched Ava, the only one who called because she wanted to talk. The only one who visited without wanting something. The only one who held my hand when I was sick, when the rest of you were too busy with your important lives. So here's what I've done. Music builds. The $5,000 I left Ava is real. She'll receive it tomorrow. But the real inheritance isn't money. It's time. You see, 6 months ago, I transferred ownership of my entire estate, the main house, the commercial properties, the investment portfolio, everything worth more than $30 million, into a trust. A trust that Ava controls. She can't touch the principal until she's 45. But she controls how it's managed. She controls who benefits. She controls everything. And here's the condition. For the next 5 years, each of you must demonstrate that you've learned something. Patricia, you will volunteer at a homeless shelter for 1 day every month. Robert, you will start and maintain a legitimate business. David, you will hold a real job for at least 2 years. Jessica, you will divorce your terrible husband. Yes, I know everything, dear, and find your own identity. Mark, you will make one major decision without asking anyone's permission. At the end of 5 years, Ava will decide. Based on your progress, she may distribute portions of the estate to those who've genuinely changed. Or she may keep everything. The choice is hers. The power is hers. The money is hers to give or withhold as she sees fit. Why did I do this? Because I want to see if this family can be saved. Not by money. Money has only made you worse. But by finally learning what I learned decades ago, that the only thing worth having is the love of people who love you back. Ava already has that love. From me. And now she has the power to decide who else deserves it. I love you all. Even the greedy ones. Even the ones who only saw my wallet when they looked at me. But love isn't enough. Change is required. Let's see what you choose. Your mother, grandmother, and hopefully, still, your teacher. Eleanor Whitmore. The room exploded. You can't be serious. Patricia stood up, her chair scraping loudly. This is absurd. She manipulated us from beyond the grave. Volunteer at a homeless shelter? Robert's face was purple. I'm a businessman. A real job. David looked genuinely panicked. I've never had a real job. Divorce, Mark. Jessica's voice was shrill. She can't tell me to divorce my husband. Mark just stared at me, his mouth open. Mr. Harrison remained completely calm. I assure you, everything is legally binding. The trust is irrevocable. The conditions are clear. If you fail to meet them, you forfeit any claim to the estate. This is her fault. Patricia pointed at me, her fingers shaking. She put her up to this. She manipulated an old woman. I sat there stunned. I hadn't known any of this. Grandma had never said a word. But as I looked at my family, their greed, their panic, their desperation, I started to understand. Grandma hadn't just given me money. She'd given me something more valuable. She'd given me leverage. And she'd given them a chance to become human. Music becomes calmer. I stood up slowly. I didn't know about any of this, I said quietly. I had no idea. Liar. Jessica shrieked. I didn't. But now that I do. I looked at each of them. Patricia, who'd never worked a day for anyone. Robert, who'd always taken shortcuts. David, who'd coasted through life on family money. Jessica, who'd married for status and been miserable ever since. Mark, who'd never had an original thought. Now that I do, I have some decisions to make. You can't do this to family. Patricia's voice cracked. I looked at her. Family? You mean the family that laughed when I got $5,000? The family that spent my entire life treating me like the black sheep? That family. I picked up my bag. The conditions stand. You have 5 years. What you do with them is up to you. At the end, I'll decide who's changed and who hasn't. I walked toward the door, then paused. And, just so we're clear, I'll be watching. Grandma taught me how to pay attention. 1 year has passed. The changes have been interesting. Patricia volunteers at the shelter every month. She hates it. But last week, for the first time, I saw her actually talking to someone there. Not performing. Just talking. She didn't know I was watching. Robert started a small consulting business. It's not doing great, but he's actually working. Actually trying. His wife told me it's the first time she's seen him passionate about anything in 20 years. David got a job. A real job. Selling cars. He's surprisingly good at it. He called me last month to tell me he'd made Employee of the Month. He sounded proud. Genuinely proud. Jessica divorced her husband. It was ugly. He tried to take everything. But she fought back, really fought, and came out with enough to start over. She's living in a small apartment now, working at a boutique, figuring out who she is without a man defining her. Mark is still figuring it out. But he's asking questions.